everyone. Ray Newmans, Wade J. Carey, Farewell My King podcast. Boy, it's good for y'all to see me, us. So, Wade, what's going on? The Beethoven of book writing, Wade J. Carey, properly introduced. How's it going, man?
Going great. Actually, looking forward to a little bit warmer weather. It's been a heck of a winter, and finishing up my 11th book.
Woo. 11. That's this. That's a field goal.
He's gonna.
So, Ray Newmans, third string theologian. Okay. I am so glad that you are here with us. Thank you so much. Today is going to be a Q&A where Ray thinks of questions and Wade J. Carey gives us the answers. So it is going to be a wonderful podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So for a little housekeeping, how do you get a hold or how do you find more about, if I can get the English language right today, more about Wade, his books, Farewell My Kings podcast, and what we're trying to do, what we're all about? Here's where you go. He has a website. Don't tell anyone or tell everyone. WadeJCarey.com. Very easy, just his name. You can find us on Facebook. We do have years and years of content on Facebook. It's /Wade J. Carey author. If you need to email us, maybe an application for a host or something. Hey, if you want to be on the podcast,
Yes,
please message us. I mean, we would love to have you on the podcast. Put it here in the comments or send us an email. We would love to. It's farewellmyking@gmail. We do actually check it. And then, of course, you're probably watching this on Facebook or YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to subscribe, please subscribe. That would be at Farewell My King on the YouTube machine. Okay. What you think, Wade? Well, what would be a good topic for today? And before you answer, it was 44 degrees in Florida this morning, and right now, if I'm correct, it's 73. Can we just get a little bit less of a temperature swing? That's all I'm asking for.
that spring. Be glad, where it's warm in the day and cool at night. I mean, the days are longer. I mean, I actually write about that in my latest book. It's the ideal scenario where it's not super hot. The mornings and nights are cool. You can open your window, but it's warm during the day, but you don't need a heavy jacket. So I've actually come to love the spring, maybe even as much or more than the fall.
Yeah, well, good for us right now. It just means no mosquitoes still. I mean, it gets
Right.
cold enough for the bugs and all that stuff to be out. Well, without delaying any longer for the people who came here to actually learn something, let's do that. How about that? So here's our topic for today. We're going to be talking about anxiety. Everyone's heard of it. Probably most of you have dealt with it. And how we're going to do that is Wade does have a book that is not published yet, not released. And it's going to cover a lot about the topic, some of the things he learned while he's walking his rescue dog, Wally, down the road. So I'm going to be asking him some questions today based on that book, just to give you, because I love teasers, just to give you a little bit of a teaser and maybe so you can start stacking some support for us, share this podcast, because we would really like to launch this book and have a successful launch. And really the whole of this is that we just want to help as many people as we can. And I know that there's a lot of people suffering with this, as I and Wade. We're both sufferers, sojourners, walkers hand in hand of a very real thing. So without further ado, question number 1. Why has the American dream created so much anxiety?
There's a lot to that, Ray. The first thing is, I don't believe most of us really know what the American dream is, what the original concept is. Back, almost 100 years ago, back in the 90s, a man named James Truslow Adams coined the phrase. And to paraphrase, essentially, he was saying the American dream is not merely about acquiring things, that it's about having the freedom to achieve what you are innately capable of achieving. In other words, if you're a high performer, you don't have anything to block your way from that. So, but most people think of the American dream, well, everybody gets a house with a white picket fence And we've been separated too far from what it really means. It's about freedom. And freedom is the opposite of what Satan wants for us. He wants us to be enslaved, and he has enslaved us. So before we go on, there's going to be multiple parts to it. Let me see if you have any comments on that.
Well, when I was looking at the question, I was like, the American dream is supposed to be this picture of hope, this picture of prosperity, or a picture of freedom, and it's supposed to be good, but it ends up being demonized to the point where if you do go get your part of the American dream, you're probably going to get some heat from it. There's anxiety on both sides. It's either the standard for the American dream is set so high that even when you're living it, you're not in, you don't think you're in it. Or then when you've got that so-called all the money, all the possessions, all the stuff, you still can't live it because you're so worried about losing it. I know when because I got some insider knowledge with the book, and I was looking through this American Dream chapter. So this is, I'm giving a bunch away, Wade. You might want to cut my mic off. So I see this American Dream, and you did a short on it, Walking Wally and stuff like that. I believe maybe that has to be one of the highest temperature and pressure points for a lot of Americans today. Is the majority of their anxiety is worrying about, hey, well, I still have a job. Well, I still have money. How can I plan for my children and their children and all this stuff, when really I think we're called to be more in the moment.
We are, but here's the thing is, before we even get down into the minutiae of details about that, I want to still cover, the bigger picture, which is, James Truslow Adams came up with that term in the 30s. Well, we know what happened soon after that, culminating in 1945 with the end of World War II. Everything changed in the world, and I think a lot of people got spiritually lazy because of the evils of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Conquering those was such an unbelievably incredible moment of victory. But then what happens? People get lazy, spiritually lazy. So there was a lot of boomers and births and all that, and you go through the 50s and that. But all the while, Satan was preparing for the next world war. And how he was doing that was to slowly set the boiling point low so that people wouldn't realize how much of our freedoms he was taking away through the infiltration of the political system. People, talk about, the deep state. Well, it's pretty obvious there has been a deep state, but that's not where I want to focus my thought process. I'm more looking at the dark state. And that definitely does exist because our Bible says it does. That's Satan and his minions who run the trillionaires, who run the billionaires, who run the politicians. So it's like a chess game. And you've got the very back level is the dark world and the dark state with Satan. And the way to win is to stay anonymous and to slowly take away people's freedoms without them even realizing it was happening. And thus, the downstream effect several decades later is enormous amounts of anxiety and a game that is rigged against working class people to try to get ahead and even just maintain having a home, having medical insurance. If you lose a job, you can get another one. Just staying off of the street because you lose everything. And it's become ever increasing. And it's happened mostly during my lifetime. I was born in 1961, and I have watched so many things I didn't understand as a kid, but now I'm looking back on it and thinking, things have gotten progressively worse because that's the way Satan designed it. Thoughts on that?
Well, it couldn't be any more true. The truth of all this is that we take a system that was designed to give everyone an opportunity, and then we end up turning everyone into a victim of the system. You getting by with the majority doing most of the work. So right now, I think the anxiety about America and the American dream, it's more of, is it even real anymore? Is it available to us anymore? And I say yes. I think it's just as available today as it's always been. But I don't think the American dream even remotely exists if it's not through a big biblical perspective. I mean, we got to take it through the Bible first before we can do this. So, I mean, that kind of leads us into our next question. I mean, if you're ready for it, Wade.
You bet.
Good. Okay, so the next question, Question number 2 is why is it so important to look at anxiety through a biblical perspective or a biblical lens?
It seems to me that human psychology has limits, and it is important because our soul, which is our distinctness, our intelligence, our humanness, human psychology can address that, but it doesn't cure anything. All it does is help you to understand some of the mechanics of it and the whys. Scripture, God, the eternal things, those are the things that give us the antidotes. And that's really what I'm trying to do with my Walks with Wally book, is identify these different ways that we can see what's happening in our life and then pivot into something of a godly nature that will give us encouragement. And it's not just like one magic pill that sweeps through everything. It's like, here are 21 ways. And I approach it as a way to essentially fast from anxiety, because anxiety is often hidden, and anxiety is, just referring quickly back to the American dream, this is really the world dream. The American dream is what everyone in this world wants, which America is made up of people from all over the world. And it is by far the greatest society that has ever lived on this planet. And it is truly the benchmark for the entire world. So the American dream, when we talk about it being freedom, that is what applies to everybody. And so everything kind of is downhill sledding for what happens here in the U.S. And we've seen that, particularly during the last decade or so. We've seen a lot of that. The way it goes in the U.S., that's the way it goes downhill through the rest of the world. That doesn't mean the U.S. is more important than other countries in this world. It just means that this is the benchmark, because this society is so incredibly powerful because of its diversity, because of the immigrants from all over the place. Because basically, unless you're a native American, your entire history comes from somewhere else.
Yeah. When I look at anxiety through the biblical perspective, I always see that as what lenses are you looking through, and then who are you looking at? So I think sometimes we take our eye off the game when we think we're watching the game. We're watching our finances, we're watching our kids, we're watching this, we're watching that. But really, we're supposed to be watching Jesus. I mean, we're supposed to be, our focus first and foremost is supposed to be on the biblical principles that we're taught in the Bible, and then playing them out. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist to think that if you're a Christian, you can't have anxiety, or you don't have faith, or you're not saved. But what I'm saying is that it's probably a symptom of some bad fruit from a bad tree in your life. As a Christian, we all have these different trees in our life, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. Sometimes we look at the world through our lens, being egotistical, egocentric. It's all about me, because of me, for me kind of stuff. Instead of looking up and saying, thank you for what I have, we look up and say, why don't I have? I mean, does that make sense? I mean, it just seems like a lot of it is a gratitude and a selfishness that kind of puts us into a place then where things get soured, and bad things are going to happen. We're going to have hardship, but who are you looking to through the hardship means a lot. So, I mean, with the biblical perspective, Wade, I know you spent a lot of time studying the Bible to prepare for the book that's coming out. Is there any key places where your heart was just jarred, and maybe even dealing with your own anxiety changed when you found a different biblical perspective while studying for the book? Was there something that just stands out to you, that just dropped the hammer on you and said, hold on, I got to change my perspective?
Well, looking at my approach to Bible study is not necessarily just go deep into one subject. I like to go from Genesis to Revelation, and that's the approach I take throughout every book that I've written, which is almost like a different prescription of sorts, covering different topics, but it's always a Genesis to Revelation systematic approach. I want to know what the entire Bible says about the entire thing. So, when we're looking at something like anxiety, I'm going to call this the Oprahfication of our society, picking on Oprah Winfrey, but, her approach with pop psychology, this, that, and the other, it only goes so far. A good example would be if you go to the doctor and they tell you, okay, well, here's what you've got. You're sick. You have this disease. Human psychology is only going to just tell you that you have it. It's not going to cure it. You need the cure. You need the medicine. And the medicine is found in the Word of God because that's where the Creator is. That's where the origin of everything is. And if we want to do anything, we're going to have to do it through the one who created all of this. And so that's where the hope is found. And that's where the acknowledgement of these things. And again, it's not just one little thing that happens, but it's the culmination of things. So when we identify something we're experiencing as a human, we're going to have to pivot and look for hope in God's word somewhere, because we're not going to get it through just saying, oh, well, this is how I feel. Well, great. Well, so what? What's next?
What they say, feelings and facts. Feelings, they change pretty quickly. Facts don't change. And that's the reason people like to lay down on feelings instead of facts. So what are some of the facts of that biblical perspective? So let's just paint the picture. We have someone who is 35 to 45. They have been climbing this mountain for years, and they are just at wit's end, burning the candle both ends in the middle. They're stressed out beyond belief. Where do you go? What do you do? Where do you find hope in all that when it seems like the whole world, and even maybe sometimes the full world church, is kind of revolving around you instead of stepping into you? What's the next place we go? How do we do this?
People will spend a lot of time, if they're going to go on a cruise, they're looking at all the ports of call, but we don't want to talk about our eternity. If we're not pivoting into the perfect world to come, we're not going to find a lot of hope. And I have been a great studier of heaven and the new earth and all of these wonderful things, but it hasn't seeped into my soul to the degree it needs to, because I've been so wrapped up with dancing with anxiety without even knowing it. And that's the problem. Someone in their 30s and 40s, I mean, you're actually able to withstand anxiety for the most part better at that age. What caught up to me is, I'm 63 years old, and I didn't realize I was doing this multi-decades dance with this horrific, disgusting enemy. And when you step back and you look, it's just absolutely incredible. So when we get too wrapped up in the American dream that is simply the secular version, where you got to get all this, you got to get all that, that's not going to give us what we need to get past these things. The other thing, Ray, is we have to acknowledge we live in a fallen world, and we're going to have some crap to deal with. It's just period. I think we expect too many wonderful things to happen because we're watching too many romantic comedies that tell us, oh, it's going to be great and everything's hallmarky and all that. Well, that's nice, but that's not really reality. Now, it's what we long for, and I think that's cool, but we can't think that life is going to go like a Hallmark movie, because
I think I've heard it from you a few times. It's called like the milk toast Jesus kind of stuff, where there's nothing required of you. Everything's dandelions and butterflies. It
right.
just is so not true. And why would a man called Jesus come into the world to make part of his prescription of help be completely opposite of the world? I mean, he came here and felt and dealt with and experienced every single physical piece of anxiety, depression, everything, sadness, anger, all of them. He dealt with them all perfectly, without sin, holy in itself. So he set the standard for us in there. And Wade, thank you for putting the eternal perspective on this. I think that's what I was waiting on, because what better perception should we have, or perspective should we have, of why not to be anxious of today when tomorrow is accounted for. Was it Matthew 6? He says, don't worry about today because tomorrow has its own evil.
Right.
I mean, be where your feet are. I mean, you've said that a lot to each other. Be where your feet are. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Be right here, 1:00 in the afternoon. What's going on? Are you being attacked? Remember where you're standing, and then go do life. So thank you for heaven is an extremely important topic when it comes to dealing with depression and anxiety. More anxiety than depression. Could you speak to that? Just and look, this I'm adding questions. I'm telling everybody I'm just adding questions to this game right now. But speak to the perspective of this life versus the next, and how that should be a place that you could sit down and rest on to help people through some of these. Because me and you both know anxiety can make you what? Blind. So how do we peel the scales back with our vision on eternity? What would be the best way to do it?
Often I've heard clinically, depression has to do with mourning over the past and longing, dealing with pain from the past. Anxiety, at least the version that I have discovered that I've been battling without realizing it, is the fictitious events that might happen and that you might jump out in front to fight battles because you want to try to protect yourself because you've had some trauma, and nobody gets through this without trauma. The ironic thing is the trauma is the things that if we use it right, could turn us into better disciples, somebody who is closer to God. And the light at the end of the tunnel is always, these are just momentary. You refer to Matthew 6. We're talking about the Sermon on the Mount. Earlier in that, what do we get? We get the Lord's Prayer, and give us today our daily bread. I've been living 3 months ahead. I'm never in the moment that I'm in. And that's because I'm trying to defend myself from future trauma by running out and trying to all right, I'm gonna duke it out with this X number event that might happen, and most of the time it doesn't happen. And I didn't even realize it because I was so embroiled with these battles and have been so accustomed to them. It's like you turn it on the fire under the pan of water, and it's on low, but after a while it's going to start boiling, but it's going to take a while, and you don't realize what's going on as it's happening. We'd go back to what you said earlier, this person in their 30s or 40s who's fighting the battles, raising kids and doing all that. The more that you can understand the eternal perspective, I'm not merely trying to sell books, but when this book comes out, I not only have the 21 days of what I suggest is a fast from anxiety, but I kind of do a montage at the end to refer back to, because we need these eternal reminders. We need to understand where we're at and why we're here, because our natural self is always going to want to try to put down roots in this world. And we get so much anxiety from building castles in the sand when Jesus doesn't want us to do that. And I hate when I do that, but I do that all of the time.
Every day. So wait, it is chapter 6. And I found it here. I've got my Logos up. So imagine that. The third string theologian having Logos up. Read the whole chapter, please, but we'll just start at 31. Do not worry then, saying, what will I eat, or what will I drink, or what will I wear for clothing? For the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things, for your heavenly Father knows what you need. But first seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and those things will be added to you. And then the last one, number 34. This has been a heartbreaker for me because I won't so much worry about tomorrow. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own.
Yep, it's right. It's right there. And every time I've read that, I just kind of glaze right over it. But once again, talking about your person in their 30s or 40s, they've got young kids. How much are this people group thinking about, my goodness, what am I going to do? I want to put my kids in private school, or I want to put them in travel ball, but I can't afford it. I got to take out a second job. All of these things, that's not really God's way of living. It's great when you can do it, but if you don't get to do these things, we somehow think we're being robbed. And believe me, we all kind of fall into that. And you know why? Because the entire media is a big propaganda network, primarily for the dark state.
Yeah, it's a consumer.
Again, this isn't the deep state politically. This is the dark state. Satan wants you to think a certain way, which will lead you away from eternity, which will have you living in the future or mourning over the past, when Jesus wants us to live the life he has chosen for us, and he wants us to live it faithfully.
Man, we're just sitting here, and you just pull up Matthew 6 and the 4 last verses. And if you want to go to 5, that would just say you have little faith. That's when Jesus is talking. Hey, but if God so clothed the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you.
Right.
You of little faith. So that's 30. Before we get into this, don't worry about, you always worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink. Am I popular enough? Do I have the biggest boat? Do I have the biggest house? Jesus is saying, you have little faith. You've got little faith. This is not your concern. This is my concern. It's like a 2-year-old son or daughter being worried about mortgage. That's how ridiculous it is. It's so easy for us to fall in the trap of just taking our role in this life so much more serious than what it is. Now, hey, I'm going to time out to say, you better take care of your family. You better do what you're supposed to do. There's a requirement, a standard that you need to live by. But some of this stuff you need to go put at the altar and allow Jesus to deal with it.
If you don't take care of your family, there's a passage in Timothy that says that God considers you worse than an unbeliever. So it is pretty serious. Yeah, worse than an unbeliever because of the terrible example you give. So, and that doesn't mean you got to go be the richest person, but you better get out there and work your butt off every day and take care of your business.
Yeah, you better do what
that's what a man does. That's what a good woman does. Everyone's got a role, and whatever God chooses, that's what we got to do. And I'm about to jump out of my shoes.
Well, here's the deal. Hey, let's don't forget who Timothy was. He ran around with this guy named Paul.
Right.
A dude that was blinded for 3 days, saw Jesus, got knocked off a horse.
Right.
Died for his faith. Died for his faith, was an actual killer of Christians, sought out to eliminate them. And this is Paul's right-hand man. Right.
But Ray, we do so much. We're so wrapped up in things in our own mind, we don't think about the eternal perspective. Let me give you an example. You just called out, Paul. I mean, the things that he did for the kingdom was incredible. Picture right now, at this very moment, as we're recording this or somebody's listening to this, Paul is in heaven with Stephen. Even though Stephen died as a martyr due to Paul, they're sitting having a cup of coffee, fully glorified in heaven waiting until they get to come to the new earth when Jesus returns and ushers in eternity. They're not at odds with each other. They just had roles here. Paul had a radical change. Stephen's little diatribe against the Pharisees in the book of Acts is, I go back and read that sometimes, it gets me fired up. I mean, that's the greatest political speech I've ever seen.
Yeah, he threw down on them. I mean, no wonder they stoned him. No wonder they stoned him. I mean, look, if you went told some of our politicians or leaders what Stephen said to them, they'd probably have you killed too. He brought the heat. So let's do this, Wade. I think we've somewhat started answering this question, but I think you've got a deeper side of the pull on this. So question number 3, our last question for the day. Question number 3, can someone be blind that they are blind to suffering with anxiety? Can they be just not even know it's happening? Is it possible?
I think it's not only possible, I think it's very common. And as I begin to roll out this topic, to talk to people, test them, I'm actually interviewing people. I'm going to people that I know have had experience with it, people who are involved with, Christian ministry for, alcohol abuse and things like that. I mean, I'm going to a wide range of respected people, and it's amazing. Everybody's got something to say. But what I'm finding is I think that it is so much more common that we're dancing with anxiety that we don't even know who we're dancing with. Picture this. For decades, I've been in this intimate slow dance, and I'm in close with anxiety, thinking this is the way I'm supposed to live my life, and I don't need any help, and I don't need counseling, and I don't need any of this other stuff, and I'm going to just let my blood pressure run crazy, and I'm okay, and I'm just doing this great dance because I've got to be committed to what I'm supposed to do. And during the last 6 or 7 months, I'm all of a sudden kind of pulling back, and who am I dancing with? And it looks like, something, looked like a zombie from The Walking Dead. It's just, and I'm horrified as I'm looking. It's like, why am I dancing with this terrible thing called anxiety? Because I didn't really know what it was. I mean, it was there. It was affecting me. You could see it. My wife could see it. People in my life could see it. But I was so committed to just taking care of my business to make sure that I'm not worse than an unbeliever, that I lost balance. And of course, that's what Satan is always trying to do. And I believe with us pursuing the American dream with the cards stacked against us because of all of the financial systems, all of these things, pharmaceutical companies, big food, all of these institutions that are not looking out for our own good. I think that us fighting against that has become so pronounced that it's easy for us to not recognize who we're doing this intimate dance with. And that was absolutely the case with me based on my generation and the number of decades I've been fighting this thing. And it's easy to turn to other things. It's easy to turn to food. It's easy to turn to alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, sex, porno, all these are, people tend to turn to something that's going to be comforting. But when you step back and realize what you're dancing with, it's not a who, it's a what. It's horrific. It is a satanically inspired amount of pressure that's due to the society that I think the dark state has created for us to just try to live a life where we're pursuing this American dream, where we're trying to find a good life to live. And that's where all of it is. But we're blind to it. This is not ignorance as bliss is good. This is ignorance as bliss was terrible. I thought it was about to take me out. And God woke me up because I asked him to. He blessed me with the ability to start understanding this. And this walk of discovery is what the Walks with Wally book is all about. I'm no expert on this. I'm a user. I'm walking through this and I'm finding so many people are interested in this topic.
Well, and the thing of it is that it's always easy to see someone else's problems, but it's not as easy to look at your own, if that makes sense, right? You know, it's hard to see perspective into yourself. I think you can be blind to suffering with it because it's a lot easier to look at everyone else and blame them for it. But I think a lot of it is that it's like we're in some kind of fight, right? Yes. I mean, is it a fight? Are we fighting against something, or are we fighting against ourselves? Are we fighting against our personality? Where's the war at?
Let's go back to my example. This is exactly the way it feels, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of people, Ray, is this slow dance. I thought I was dancing with doing what I should be doing. I'm trying to please God. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do my job. I'm trying to take care of family. I'm trying to do all of these things. I don't know that I'm dancing with death. I don't know that I'm dancing with a zombie until I start to pull back. And that's essentially what God did. When I saw the ugliness of that zombie I was dancing with, I literally dancing with death. Satan likes it that way. He wants us to stay snuggled in with something that's a lie, because when we pull back and we look at who we're dancing with, we realize that it is death itself. And anxiety will kill you. It'd be heart problems. It'll be the whole myriad of health problems that we could possibly have. And only by the grace of God am I still alive, honestly.
Well, and it can take your life because you take your life. And here's the deal. You don't have to die. You don't have to commit suicide to die. I believe that our suicide numbers is a direct reflection of this, of anxiety, untreated, untaken care of. I mean, it's just like we're overlooking it and saying, hey, we're looking at the world. I'm not normal. I'm not like them, so I just need to check out. But here's the problem. Them numbers we can count. We can count the number of people who have taken their life because they let this get out of control. What's the numbers of the people who quit living, who just gave up, who decided to die, but live out until they get a eulogy? That's the ones that I fear for, pray for, and I hope that they find hope in this new book or in this podcast, because that's who we're really trying to talk to, is the people who are dead but still living.
Ray, I want to encourage those who are listening to this, and especially once the book comes out, a couple of things. I hope that recognition is something people will be able to do, because once you recognize what you're dealing with, you can take the steps. Sometimes people don't, Ray, and they end up in these terrible vacuums of depression and these other types of things. But once you can recognize what you're doing, and I hope that every single person who even thinks they're dealing with anxiety will do what God ended up doing with me, is pull back and look who you're dancing with. Are you pursuing something that's godly, or are you pursuing something because it's the image that the society wants? But the other piece is Satan plays these games of balance, as I've mentioned ad nauseum. Here's where God led me as this started towards recovery of it. And it's going to be a continual thing, actually, till the day I die. But there's three aspects of the human being. We're physical, that relates to the environment. We're mental, which is our intellect and our experiences, and we're spiritual. That's what sets us apart from the animal world is our spirit. We know right from wrong, and that's what we're made in God's image. If you attack anxiety, make sure you attack it on all fronts, because everybody's going to have a different level of it. So I attacked it from the physical, which I had just totally ignored. For example, I went to my doctor who had been beating me up about getting on some blood pressure meds, and I finally did. I started looking at several things to help level me off because I was so high strung, heading towards a heart attack probably. So I attacked it physically. Equally, I attacked it mentally by, for the first time, stopping that nonsense of, well, I don't need counseling. I found a Christian counselor who is opening up a lot of doors for me to understand what has taken place. So I've got the physical, I've got the mental, or my soul, which is me. And of course, the spiritual is the book. It's the examination of these 12 little things, these 12 little antidotes that put together, I think, can provide a much brighter insight into it. So all three of these things are important, and they're all equal in their own different ways. Too often it's like an either or. Well, if you just take some meds, you're okay. Or if you just go to counseling, no, you need to look at all three of these things, because in balance, Satan cannot defeat us when we're tending to these things, because that is our makeup. We're physical, mental, and spiritual creatures, and all have to be tended to with the equal care.
Well, and to agree with you there, I was on all the medication and got worse. It took a bigger prescription than one you can find at the pharmacy to get everything fixed with me. You're not going to say this about yourself, but I'll say it because I've got my own microphone. I mean, dude, you lost a whole bunch of weight during the fat months. So this is not just a theory that you're talking about. This is facts that you are living out in your life every day. I think we'll wrap it up and get us, maybe we start this topic again. I think we could talk for a couple hours. Me and you usually do when we start talking about this stuff. But what I want to tell everyone here, and I'm going to have some information come up on the screen right as we close out. There's hope here, but you have to take the first step, okay? With Wade can attest to it, and I can attest to it, that we really have to take responsibility for taking care of ourselves, and that might be that there's no one coming to save us, and we need to be the one who saves us. So please get help as soon as possible, and that help could be picking up the phone and calling a friend. That help could be putting some comments here and let us talk to you. That help could be finding a local church, finding a local counselor. Christian, I would say Christian counselor would be the best bet. If you're not a Christian, please talk to us, and then hopefully we can find you a Christian counselor after you become one.
I extend an invitation for everyone who's hearing this now. Invite you into fellowship and discovery, because I would challenge a lot of people are in my boat where you're dealing with anxiety and have a general feeling that you are, but you don't really know. Again, we're not looking at this merely clinically, because neither one of us are qualified for that. We're followers of Christ, and we know what sin is, and we know the battles that we deal with in spiritual warfare. But I want to invite everyone into fellowship, because we don't have all the answers, but we want to find them, and we're walking through it. And it's not always easy to walk into something you're not an expert on and think that you can start speaking to it. But I can tell you this, that my walk of discovery has opened my eyes, and it's changed my life. And, we want to invite you in to be with us as we go through this. And as the book comes out, the books are intended to open up fellowship. And that's really what we want. And I'm telling you, this topic, more than anything I've ever written about, is getting the most interest from people. People just stop. Yes, I understand there's something there with anxiety. So let's dig into it and see, not as experts, but as fellow sojourners on this walk of life where most of us are trying to pursue the American dream, and the difficulties we have in obtaining it and keeping it.
Well, amen, Wade. Thank you so much. And for this time with Farewell, My King, I'd like to close us out with where we started. And I pulled up a different version because I know these words were different in certain different versions, but that chapter 6, verse 34, it says, do not have anxiety about tomorrow. Do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself, and there is enough trouble of its own into the day. We love you. We care for you. You know how to find us. I'll put that back up on the screen so you can take a look and reach out. Everything's going to be in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. We enjoy it. And thank you, Wade, for answering my questions. And to everyone out there, have a blessed day.
God bless you.